I'm the chairman, Luke Grant. We're just going to go around and tell everybody who's here. Why don't we go to Mr. Bishop?
Steve Bishop, clerk.
Frank Fournier, Norton Water and Sewer Superintendent.
Steve Peterson, Weston and Sampson.
Tara McManus, Weston and Sampson.
Thank you, everybody, and welcome everybody from the remote part. Victoria, can you hear us?
Yes.
Very good. All right, then. Let's do this. We're going to start with superintendent updates. Right.
Thank you. Kick back to everybody's favorite topic, hydrant flushing. We've actually been making some pretty big strides. We're probably more than 3/4 to 7/8 done with the town. A lot further along than I expected we would be. Water quality has been steady and clean in most areas. We had a couple of hiccups along the way, and it actually wasn't water quality, it was actually water availability. With some of the isolated areas that I've been working and narrowing it down, like I mentioned it in past meetings, we've been turning probably almost twice as many gates as we have typically in the past to isolate an area, to both conserve water and to make sure that the impacted areas were smaller than originally would be. When we were out at nighttime, there was less people impacted, there were less people awake when we were out there, and obviously that's 100% different from where we are now. So we did have two instances with very low water pressure that prompted a couple of phone calls to the office. The first one is actually in an older section over here, South Worcester Street. The crews followed my orders, isolated a few valves, and come to find out as they moved along and transitioned from one street to another, there was a significant drop in pressure. Prompted their curiosity. They were, good enough to call here. We got some additional staff out there, and just by process of elimination, we were able to determine the area where it changed, and we actually found a partially closed valve. So it's unfortunate, but it's a win. It ended up to be a win.
Because we all know, was it a butterfly or a gate, do you know?
It was a regular gate.
All right.
It's actually a backwards operating gate because of the age of it. So typically you would think that it's in the open position, and you were actually closing the valve if you didn't have any way of knowing. There is no paperwork on that area.
No.
It's that old, unfortunately. It's a section that we haven't been able to get the valve exerciser out to, which would help us determine that. So this is the old-fashioned way, if you will, of finding partially closed valves or closed valves in your system. Nobody likes it. Definitely we don't like it. It creates problems with sampling, problems with fire flow, and
Well, residual buildup. I mean,
Yep.
we all it's just an entire plethora of horror. But
Exactly.
good. No, you must be down to just a couple of iffy valves here and there.
there are probably a handful in the
Yeah.
older section. We are, for the lack of better terms, gun shy about going out and operating them, not knowing the position of or the condition of them. Even though we have the fancy expensive machine that you can adjust the torque down on it, I still like the hands-on approach. You kind of get a good idea when you get a feel onto
Sure.
it, not a machine doing it for you. Again, that takes time, and this is one way that we benefit our system by spending a little bit more time out there. We wouldn't have the luxury of doing it if we were still flushing in the evening hours, and most likely we wouldn't get the calls because there would be nobody awake
Right.
at 1, 2 in the morning when we're out there doing it. The only reason we would see something change would be the drop in pressure as you went from hydrant to hydrant, and that doesn't always indicate a closed valve. It could just be a smaller pipe in the system. So there's definitely some benefits. Unfortunately, there is also some impact to the residents when we come across this. It was taken care of as quickly as we could. I believe there may have been a half an hour or so that there was some calls coming in for low pressure. Knock on wood, no dirty water. We
Wow.
flushed to the closed valve, both different directions, opened the valve, found out again it was a backwards valve, and it's only going to further improve flow and quality in that area.
That's
Now
awesome.
that we know the position of it, it's been documented, and that'll be added to the list. It is one of the streets that we intend on hopefully replacing within the next 5 to 10 years. If things keep going the way that they are, we'll probably even move that one up a little bit closer because of the age
Yep.
that is out there. We haven't had too many problems with hydrants. We had a couple that went down during the flushing program. Most of them appear to be actually impacts from vehicles over the years, whether it was a truck backed into it, a plow hit it during the winter. There was no physical damage until you operate the hydrant and you get the water coming from the ground. So throughout the program, we've replaced about 6 hydrants so far. Most of them due to age, 2 of them were broken. So we're staying up on that, trying to keep the crews busy and separated at the same time. The second incident, unfortunately, again in a very similar area, was the South Worcester area. Was again a different scenario, but we had it isolated, so we had a single directional flow, unilateral flow for flushing, and 3 days in the week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, not an issue. Come up the next day, and pressure was different, flow was different, and we heard on the radio that the fire department responded to one of the commercial buildings, and their fire pump had actually run. So the combination of the isolation, the flushing, and the fire pump running, which triggers the jockey pump to run so that there's constant flow trying to keep pressure, was enough to actually pull system pressure down in the area. Knowing the area, knowing the building in question, we already had crews on the way once we heard the fire being dispatched to that location.
You did.
Open the second source valve, which is counterproductive to the unilateral flushing, but we were able to get the system pressure to a stable amount. We flushed with 2 different crews to the area that was affected, and again, knock on wood, no dirty water. It was an impact to the pressure. It wasn't an impact to the quality, which again speaks volumes for what we've been able to go through and where we've come. We are working with that commercial property. I've offered them some assistance with pipe locating with our new device that we have. They have a company that they've hired years prior to come in and do leak detection, and unfortunately, because of the age of the structure and the amount of pipes in the ground, it was very hard for them to determine a leak over what is considered ground noise from underground utilities, everything in the area. But they are still working towards correcting the known leak in their system. The jockey pump cycles every so often, a lot more than it would normally do on the tight systems. And the combination of the jockey pump running, the isolation, the flushing, it was just a perfect storm. It was 2020. We couldn't have planned it to happen again if we wanted to, but we're working with them to correct the issue.
Very good.
Again, system impact was minimal, thankfully. Crews actually now, they've finished Maple Street, the Goldenwood area as well. I believe we got a thumbs up from the commissioner that might be living in that area. I'm not sure if he still resides over that way. They're moving to the Oak Street area, was probably going to be one of the last larger sections that we have to do. We have a handful of small streets left that I believe, with the weather as good as it's been, we will be able to complete and get a lot further along than I anticipated. I believe probably 3 meetings ago, we weren't even looking at half the town being done, and I think we might actually complete the town this time around.
Very good.
So that'll have a major impact on our sampling that we have to do this month, next month, and every month from thereafter. And we will deal with the PFAS that will be being talked about in a relatively short period of time as the new well 5 comes online. That's part of the sampling requirement. I have calls into DEP to find out if that automatically triggers a full round of samples at the sources. As far as it is right now, I don't believe it does. We may go and be proactive and do it, as long as everybody is on board with that, but it's a lengthy discussion, something that we'll talk about a little bit more.
It's an expensive sample.
It is an expensive sample. We're actually looking into see, I've heard that there is potential for grants to pay for the sample if you get on board early. So that's definitely something that I'm waiting to hear back from DEP
Running out.
to help us out a little bit
Who are
financially.
you dealing with in DP? Bill Schwartz?
Yes. That is the name.
Yeah, he's a good guy.
Okay. Jump ahead, hydrant flow test. Next Wednesday, the 18th, there's a hydrant flow test scheduled in the area of 184 West Main Street. This is to verify system flow and pressure for an existing suppression system for a building in that area. Jump across to well 5. Work began at well 5. Unfortunately, last week I actually had to call a tree service in after that freak snow and ice storm that we had, there was actually a limb that was partially severed from a fork in a tree, and it was hanging over the power lines that feed both 5 and 6. I asked Highways Assistance, because of the proximity to the wires, they're not line certified, so they didn't want to touch it, which I definitely can't blame them. It's high voltage. The grid was out still working, removing live trees from the wires, so they couldn't give me an ETA. Made a few phone calls and were able to get somebody in later that night to remove that limb. Just one more thing that would have went against us as far as mobilizing for the driller rig to come in
Right.
the following week.
All of it. Rather be proactive than wait for a...
It's basic maintenance. There's quite a few trees out there that unfortunately, when you get a little bit of snow and ice load on them, do tend to lean towards the power lines. National Grid doesn't deem them an immediate threat, even though we've had them in on multiple occasions. They're more of a reactive company than a proactive, which is fine. I know we had talked in the past about having some trees taken down over at the treatment facility. We did have one come down and damage a fence during that same storm, and the company I was able to secure, I've asked them to come back and give us an estimate on a few different locations.
Right, the inside of that donut.
Yep, the donut, a few on the exterior of the fence that could reach the building and are leaning that way,
Yep.
as well as a few that are precariously hanging over the existing power lines. It's great to have the generators in place, but if you can take care of the damage, or take care of the trees before the damage happens, I'd rather do that.
Absolutely.
Let's see.
And
Yep.
since we opened up such a large area out there for the treatment plant, I'll call them Q-tip pine trees, which they just have a little bit up top, really, they used to rely on the other pine trees in that forest, but now we have quite an opening, so whichever ones you think need to be eliminated or fine.
Yeah, there's been a few branches or limbs, not so much as full trees coming down in the roadway, enough that we've had to cut our way in, cut our way out, which is kind of typical in the winter. It seems to be a little early for that right now, especially where you have a 70 or an 80-degree day a couple days afterwards. So if it's any indication of how the winter is going to go, we will definitely be calling on some tree companies. It seems like they are extremely busy.
Sure.
I believe one company that I called is looking at possibly 5 to 6 week turnaround just to get somebody out for an estimate, let alone a crew coming out.
Right.
So it's going to be a dragged out process. We do have our own chainsaws and we have some knowledge of how to take down some trees, but we're not going to take anything down around a power line or a building.
Yeah, right.
We'll maintain the facility the way it is now, but we'll probably defer to the professionals in the very near future. That's about all I have. I'm not going to take away from Tara or Steve. I know there's some interesting improvements that we will hear about for both.
Very good. Let's go to Steve from West Wisconsin.
All right, so for an update on West Main Street sewer, so since we last met, the connection for the schools has been made, and that flows, and the flow meter is in place. Out on Howard Street, there was some discussion with Howard from the sewer department and with Frank on the meter that's out there.
No connection between Howard and Howard Street.
Correct. Basically it's a different style meter than what the town has and is used to seeing. We're gathering some information on it's definitely a meter intended for wastewater applications. It's different, and I get it. There are concerns about the long-term maintenance of it. So at this point, it's in place. I don't know if you've been getting readings. You shouldn't be getting high readings.
Right.
There shouldn't be a lot coming down that line. And the meters, any meter you have, they're going to have more trouble with a trickle coming down the
Sure.
line. So, and with the schools the only ones being online and really not using a lot of water, based on the fact that even when they're in session, it's half session. So, So that's where we're at with that.
And can we coordinate and check, meters in the school, water meters, to confirm or deny or compare, I guess I should ask,
and
the
that's
flow?
Yeah.
I know it seems obvious, but it's another check and balance that we can do just to
Yeah.
maybe make a comparison. And, I know, Steve, you were gonna look into the diameter of the manhole where the type of meter is. Is it diameter sufficient to change the meter out, or is that just?
I don't, I'm waiting for a definitive answer on that, but for a flume type meter, I believe it's undersized to be able to get a flume in there,
Okay.
which is what the other gravity meters in town that read for Mansfield, for flows to Mansfield are. But there are other options. The biggest concern that the maintenance personnel expressed was that the sensor itself was in the wastewater. With the flumes, you know, it consolidates everything, and then the reading is from above. This is a sensor in the bottom of the pipe. It's very low profile. I mean, we'll have to keep an eye and see if anything's getting hung up on it. I don't, you know, again, they're made for this installation. So that was his first concern, is this stuff going to get hung up on it and be a maintenance issue and affect the readings
Sure.
a little bit, obviously. You know, and keeping in mind, this meter is a deduct meter. So the meter that you get billed for, that you provide to Mansfield, is the flow meter coming out of the pump station at Wheaton. But then in order to be able to calculate Wheaton's bill, we need to subtract out whatever is coming down the line before the pump station.
Got it.
So we'll look at that. I think, you know, watching what the meter's reading and what the water readings are, and most likely they'll make our head hurt anyway, because anytime you try and compare different methods of flow measurement, it's hard to get two different methods to give you the same number.
Sure.
But we'll look at it, and we'll continue to see if this is the right application. I mean, I certainly have confidence that it'll read the flow very well. It's a high precision type flow meter, and we'll have to see if it is a maintenance issue.
Okay.
And if we need to do anything. So the schools are connected. The big thing with connecting the schools was being able to circle back and do the rest of the work on Freeman Street, or on the Freeman Street section. So they've finished the force main. They got the last service across the road. There was one service that we couldn't get across without taking out that existing sewer line that was headed back to the middle school. So we got that line in, and then as of today, the stub out to Freeman Street is done, and there's a manhole set there for a future connection. So that's all the excavation work that needs to be done. So we're down to surface restoration, paving, putting it in a permanent trench patch for the winter, and that's what they're working on now. And I mean literally now, because they are still out there, because their paver crapped out on them today at around 3 o'clock when they had about an hour to go. So if anybody came down 123 to get here, or even just coming down Worcester Street, you could see the traffic just trying to get out to 123, people that were avoiding all the way back at Taunton Ave, were just avoiding 123 and coming around. So,
I got calls.
yeah, yeah, they're out there. They're paving.
Paving is racing. Anything in the street is racing, but paving especially. You have the trucks there. It's all perishable product. The whole.
Yep. So they were, you know, within 10 or 15 minutes, I think, of having all the paving down when I came through at 5 o'clock on my way over here. And that's what they're going to be doing for the next couple of weeks. These permanent trench patches should be in place before Thanksgiving at this point. It's definitely going to carry through all of next week. Hopefully they'll be able to get the balance of it done next week.
And how do we
There's a couple
deal,
thousand feet to do, so.
yeah, how do we deal with the state? Do they observe the overcuts, or is that you guys in the engineering inspection department,
So,
or are you coordinating any of that?
They observe the next phase closely,
Okay,
right, because there's still a full lane width
all right.
mill and overlay
spring,
that has to
or in
happen
the
in the
summer.
spring. Yeah,
Got
after
it.
the winter
Okay.
freeze thaw. You know, should be, you know, real solid. They're recompacting the trenches as
So
they
they're
go.
totally
Putting
opening
7
up.
inches down. They're putting 7 inches of mix down.
All right.
They cut it back a foot.
I
So that's what you
saw
were
the
talking
cut
about. So
last
there's a
week.
1 foot cut back to make it a clean trench instead of any, you know,
Right.
jagged trench going down the road. As well as the cross trenches are all cut back and then paved. And that should be solid for the winter, for the plows. And then in the spring, Mass DOT will come out and look at it with the contractor and the engineer and determine, you know, where they might want full width. So we're on the hook for full lane width all the way down, and then in areas where we either encroached into
Right.
or over the center, they may require a full lane width, but they most likely a full road width,
Right.
not lane width. And then where we have, you know, depending on the frequency of the cross trenches, you know, if they're every 50 feet over a 400-foot stretch, they'll probably say it's, by
Right.
the time you cut all these in, you're gonna have 10 feet, 30 feet, 20 feet in between, so that's the final paving is, you know, they mill out 2 inches and put the final surface treatment with the super paved product that's required by Mass DOT.
Very good. Getting near the end.
And so what's left, other than the work in the street, is just punch list at the pump station. And hopefully they can, you know, once they get the paving done, they'll focus on getting that done so we can get the station started up and connect, you know, we can connect the housing authority, and then talk about sending letters out to the abutters.
Very good.
Get the sewers approved for use once we approve the pump station. So,
Good.
so that's where we're at with the sewer. I have a pay rec that came out last week. I emailed it, so this is pay rec number 13. We've gone over with the contractor, made our adjustments. So the quantities are recommended by us for your approval. $387,425. And this is the work that's happened since the last pay rec, which is
Gotcha.
a lot of the
And
final
what-
piping.
How much is left on the total contract? Like, what does this leave us with?
So left on the, oh, that's a good question. And they won't use the full, oh, my eyes don't see it. And I want to complete, oh, let's see, that's not. Dad, can you read that number?
$974,285.
So the paving is a big ticket, and we're not gonna hit all of that, so some of the quantities are coming in under. But there's a little, under $1 million left if you look at
Total.
the contract amount and where we're at with the quantities.
Right.
So, so there's less than $1 million left, you know, based on that. And if, you know, paving is expensive,
Sure.
everything that's left
They've already done
is paving.
They've already done a run-up of that, pump station to test it, or they can't do
They,
it?
so no, they have to do their own, yeah, they're testing pieces as we go, but everything's not connected, it
They
needs to be
can't
in
get
place.
to it yet,
Yeah.
all right.
So, yeah, there's some plumbing work.
I just don't wanna get too far out paying them for, in case some.
Yeah, so the
you know,
pump
Murphy
station
shows
is in-
up and something's bad,
Yep.
you know, I don't know, I'm just.
We have a significant
It
amount of
sounds like
retainage.
Even if we only have
Yeah.
750 from what's left, we're okay.
Yeah. And we have 200,000 in retainage, and we haven't paid them for 100% of the pump station yet. They gave us a list of values, and as they finish certain aspects of it, we've been approving it. So there's still money left on the pump station itself, to be paid.
Now, they've done a lot of,
So these are
a lot of late nights and a lot of,
the three
production,
copies
and
of it.
they certainly should be paid.
Yeah, no, that work is unquestioned. That's in this pay rec right here is the work that they've done.
Sounds good.
We need a motion to approve this, or we just sign it?
Doesn't hurt to have them. Doesn't hurt to have them.
Let's go ahead and, if you would do a motion, Mr. Bishop?
Sure. Motion to approve pay rec
13.
number 13 for the amount of $387,425.06.
I'll second it. All in favor?
Aye?
Aye.
All right, so it's just the front page on each of the three copies there, so you don't have to flip through the pages. There's pens everywhere. On this one. So while you're signing that, I think that's everything I have right now on West Main Street. So we do have, so Mass DOT has a moratorium after November 15th. Last year they allowed the paving to continue beyond, and they're doing the same this time. Their biggest stipulation was that all the trench work is done. They don't want them to continue to be digging and creating more trench beyond the November 16th. Just the two of you there, yep. That's how we've done the last ones. And I'll leave two with you, Frank, and I'll take one. That's my copy. Thank you.
Yeah, so that's the current.
So they're setting curbing, yeah, as part of the paving. So from Honeydew up towards Freeman Street, they were literally right on the curb line. So they ripped all that curbing out, so they're resetting all the curbing in advance of the paving.
We don't have any water curb boxes in the sidewalk, do we?
Pick it up.
Nothing? Good. Just another headache, lay around when it's all finished off and we're gonna dig it out.
So we have made the request with Mass DOT. I've talked to them. They're fine. I mean, they're going to give them the extension to finish this paving as long as the pavement plants are open. I guess nobody really has an option, because if you tell them they can't, then they'll just go away for the winter and the road will be the way it is now.
I gotta.
We cannot.
I'll have to shut off social media and my phone if that happens.
They're
Now,
actually
according-
working tomorrow. They have special permission to work tomorrow.
Yeah,
too.
you mentioned.
So yep, that's right. I forgot that. So they got that last year too. I forgot.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you were asking
At
for
the
that
end of the
last
year,
meeting.
this one, it's the middle of the week, the Monday holidays.
Right.
Mass DOT's real skittish on the long weekend type of stuff. They've been burned before, I'm sure, but this one, Wednesday, the middle of the week, and knowing that we got to get this paving done, they
Good.
approved
There
it.
should
So
be
they're
less
working
traffic for
tomorrow.
them to work a little more, and they can start earlier, right, because they don't have to contend with school.
Yeah.
Great,
Yeah, I'm sure they'll sneak out there as early as they can.
beautiful.
Certainly needs the paving.
I heard a rumor from Mass DOT that one of the residents we've been dealing with out there, who was renting, moved.
So,
Not a bad thing.
I don't know who this is from, Nicole, who also gets phone calls.
Yep.
And
We spoke.
Yep, she spoke with all. Okay, so I don't know, and I'm sure it was the day after the last hammer that the move happened.
Well, it was communicated, so
Yeah.
she knew where we were along the way.
Yeah.
So,
I think we did the best we could. I mean, it's a tough situation. I get it. That noise was awful, but
it was.
and very disruptive. But and then the timing of it. For the good news that there was less traffic. The bad news that there was, most people were home.
Yeah.
If you're doing it during the day, the beauty is, all people are at work. But anyway, so that's West Main Street. Cobb Street, we're going to schedule, we're going to get going on putting together a package to do the short-term immediate needs repair work under the current budget. I'm actually shooting for next Wednesday at this point. So I was trying to do something this week. I did talk to Howard after I talked to you. Howard's out until Thursday this week. So he said he could do Thursday, but I wasn't able to pull the guys on my end together for Thursday. So I think we'll shoot for, and Howard, Fridays aren't great, and I agree. Rather not get stuck into the afternoon on Friday doing that. So we're gonna shoot for next Wednesday. I'll coordinate with you and Howard and our electrical. It's mostly electrical work. It's just the replacing out the generator, the conduit that has all the water damage to it, so we can get those blowers back online for the ventilation, and then some lighting in the wetland.
Yeah, we had an in-depth discussion about the generator. We have the sister generator at one of our other facilities, and our person that we have that's contracted to do maintenance on that is having difficulties finding some parts.
Okay.
So it seems like it wasn't just a one-off issue that we had many years ago. So I think it will be in our best interest to look at replacing that as part of the project. It may be able to wait until a little further down the line so we can get the other items taken care of first, the electrical conduit, the ventilation, the water seepage into the station itself. I think we could spread money that we have appropriated already a little further, and then deal with the generator as we move on.
Oh, that's okay. I mean, the generator was part of this phase
It was,
one
yeah.
stuff, so if we want to apply that money elsewhere to something else that's more pressing, we just need to figure that out when we have our site visit, so we can plan accordingly. And I'm not waiting to hear about the review.
I did send another question about it to find out. I mean, it's been, I believe, since June, if I remember correctly, and I'm not always the best with memory, but I think it was since June that was originally sent over, and for whatever reason, something
Just
come
the
up and...
approval is to form, which it's the format that's been approved before.
Exactly.
The only thing is they have someone new looking at it now. So anyway, I think we're good.
Very nice.
I think that's it for sure.
Okay, moving right along, Tara with water.
Okay, thanks. So just to follow up a little bit with the PFAS comment from Frank, DEP is still offering free sampling of sources. They do just request us to do all of the sources. So DEP did issue, and I believe I forwarded you a detailed email with all of the information, but the main goal for DEP, they did pass the new test to go from 70 to 20 parts per trillion is the new sample rate. That starts, so all public water suppliers will
Parts
be...
per trillion.
Parts per trillion. Parts
Oh,
per
this is
trillion.
That's just the tiniest, wow.
It's a piece of sand in an Olympic-sized swimming pool.
Yep, trillion.
It's a low number, so...
Whoa, okay.
Definitely take field blank tests. and
Watch out for
make sure
that
you're
one.
not contaminating when you do the
So
sample.
what did it go to and from, did you say?
It's, I mean, you can be on, you're not supposed to shower for a couple of days, you can't put makeup on, you
Yep.
can't wear...
Did you say
Perfume.
20, went from 20 to 70?
From 70 to 20.
Or to 70 to, what, 20 parts per trillion?
Yep.
That's what it's been, isn't it?
It's been the RSG, but the 70 was kind of the standard. It's officially 20 starting, that they have to sample and you have to be below that. There's, I can get into
No, that's okay. I don't want you, this, not necessary.
DEP was
The way they think.
requesting you to take sources offline between 20 and 70 before. Yeah.
We got 2 offline.
That's
But
anything.
it's the new
Little
the
tiny.
regulated
Wow.
number now for Massachusetts.
Okay.
Okay.
It's not 7, so there's,
That's April 1st.
yeah, that might be next year, yeah. So, but first quarter of 2021, you'll be required by, I forget the exact date in March, but you'll be required to sample and provide that, those results.
We've
So-
tested for this before, when we did our UCMR 3s.
Yeah,
We're on UCMR 5 now. Well, we're gonna be.
yep. And
So
UCMR
we-
4 did not require PFAS, but UCMR 3 did, and Norton was non-detect at that time, so.
Yep, we all were because of the number, yeah.
Right.
That's scary.
So, and you can get some blanks, you can get some false readings. I mean, these are, you're sampling for the 6 PFAS compounds that DEP is, requiring. It's a combination of those totals equal 20. You can get some false hits. The sampling of something around 2 parts per trillion is pretty difficult, but, so as we go through, and we can work it through that too, but, it's, yeah, certainly, they are funding the actual cost to use the lab for the samples, so, and it is several $100. So yeah, just let us know if you have more questions on that.
We have a place in Mansfield we use to so you know. Yeah.
That's one of the DEP
They
spots, yeah.
turn around just quick, much quicker.
Yeah, it takes, and also the downfall is it's about 2 to 3 weeks. And some of it's verbal, and you really do want to see the actual lab test results on forms signed by the lab, especially with these different triggers that they'll have as results. So following up on that, so you mentioned with well 5, the work started on Friday of last week. We do anticipate the driller to be out there for another few weeks, continuing to drill and install the casing pipe. Steps after that would be taking the soil samples, developing and figuring out what size screen will be installed, getting the right slot size for that, and then next steps would be to spend a few weeks developing the well, and then we would do the 48-hour pumping test. So long and short of that work, over the next few weeks by Thanksgiving or so, they're hoping to have the well finished as far as the casing pipe goes, and then there'll be a couple weeks in between, and then hopefully by the end of December we'll be pumping for the 48-hour pumping test. So we anticipated about 2 months. Good news would be 6 weeks. We're anticipating 8. So we'll see how that goes over the next few weeks. DEP had indicated at prior to the last meeting, I think I mentioned it, we were still waiting for well 6. However, the results, at least from them, for signing off, we just need the actual signature from somebody at DEP. So we're still waiting for that. Kevin McKinnon from our office has reached back out, or will be this week, to just check back in with them and just see where they're at. As many communities are having issues with work from home, has not been easy for DEP. So there's been some transitional issues and also for concerns with just equipment and computers and stuff. So it's hard for them to get actual signatures on some of the forms that they need. So. But as far as that's going, so that's up. The erosion control measures are in place. We notified conservation. We had the original meeting before last commissioner meeting just to talk about that. The agent was notified, and we'll monitor as needed and check things and let us know if there's any issues. We'll also be out there checking on it as well. It is nice weather over the last few days, so we do have a lot of pedestrians in that area. So they did put up some cones and other safety precautions, but if anybody is listening to this call, we just, it is actually the town's drinking water source, so if you can, please try to stay away from the active construction zone. It would be great. Also try to keep your dogs from littering in other areas, so.
Pick up your weight. As it is off-road, I imagine we can do a swap over, underground piping as soon as they're good to go, or what is the timing on that?
So the driller, it's pretty much a vertical, so the concern would be...
Well, I'm thinking connection to the well, or how does that...
The connection to the well would be, we have to go out to bid for that.
Okay.
So that would be this spring.
Okay.
That's the intent. We would need to get DEP approval of the design and the 48-hour pumping test for both of those.
All right.
Prior to going out to...
Is that a directional drill type of thing that you're gonna have to do?
Nope. We actually set up, if you recall, we actually brought in brand new water mains.
Yeah.
Under the treatment plant project to
Yeah.
both wells. And we have 2 T's. They're not quite located in the
so it's
great place,
just
but
going...
we have them out there, so we just have to tie right in. So
Okay.
it's a relatively easy process. Our intent is to install a vault with a flow meter in there, as well as a pitless adapter. So we have to bring conduits and power to the new well, certainly from the existing buildings. But they're adequately supplied, so there's just a few conduits that need to go more of a longer distance that would cross that road. But
Perfect.
again, the intent would be to start that work. If we had reasonable weather and snow allowed, probably April or so, if not a little sooner than that for
Great.
that. So we would anticipate trying to bid around January or so.
Super.
So hopefully, we won't have necessarily all 6 done by then, but again, with the process of just awarding contracts, it might take a little bit longer.
Sure.
So that's the whole goal with well 5 and 6 replacement. I was going to switch over to the treatment plant. So I've been working with the contractor. They provided me with several different updates over the last few days and last week. One of their site guys was out there last week to set up some of the fans to go into the recycle tank. This week they've actually been turned on. There was some confusion last week on what was going on. They anticipate that to be dried out by the end of this week, and they've scheduled full and waterproofing for Tuesday and Wednesday next week. It is a 2-day process, so that should be done Wednesday. I think it's a 72-hour dry time. It might be only 48, but we either will be ready by next Friday, depending on how things go, to test for water tightness, or the following Monday, or over the weekend if the town's ready for it. And that is something that the operators have been helping with filling the tank with water. So I did review their punch list with them. They sent me a revised punch list.
Welcome and thank you for choosing freeconferencecall.com. You're helping people around the world communicate for free. Please enter your access code followed by the pound or hash sign. The recording has started. Please announce yourself.
What's the process of curing the epoxy coating? Does it cure under normal temperatures? Do they heat inside of the tank, or?
No, if it was a full thick liner, it'd be a little bit of a different story, but this is just a mill thickness coating. First layer, the base layer, they'll rough up the inside a little bit, especially, they've already put the same coating on the bottom and tough 1 foot on the side. We had originally,
all right, now it's coming back to me.
yeah,
Thank you.
so we had originally talked about doing the full sides, and they obviously are required to fix it themselves and pay for it and all the labor, so they were holding back on that level, and then found that they need to do the full level. So those rough up little edges around, clean it out. It just needs to be dry. That's the biggest thing. So,
Okay.
they've got the fans going, and it did take several days last time. And I believe that some water did get in from what we heard from the operators last week. So from when they set things up last week. But, so,
Is it obvious where the water's coming in as the water table comes up? Is that where one of the if water leaks out, water can leak in? So
right.
is that happening?
It's not what we haven't had. The water table hasn't been high enough.
Okay.
So we haven't been able to see that.
Well, I guess that's a good thing for the curing or the drying.
Exactly. There are some positives for fall, which we were a little nervous about because it's been taking so long for them to get out there and get this done. But yeah, there hasn't been any signs of any groundwater coming up that high yet. So one positive sign of the drought. Other than that,
I'll take it.
about it. So, but yeah, that's the.
Because I know the groundwater is starting to come up.
Yep.
A couple of jobs that we have open, it's starting to.
We've been able to see a little bit as if it rains, because you can actually, it's so sandy out there, you can actually see it come around and see some damp spots, but it's been an interesting process of finding exactly, other than excavating everything out, which would be a major undertaking.
Not right now.
Yeah, you're not going to really be able to see one way or another. So you would be able to try to fill it with water and see where it's coming out that way. But it has been, the thought that is a gasket may have rolled while they did the installation.
Sure.
They did see crack injection sealant at several visible cracks that they could see. They had sealed up all the different joints across the different sections. But it was our opinion originally that putting in the epoxy paint, if you will, coating would be the first level. A liner gets pretty intense. That's a little bit more than we would anticipate. But again,
Let's see where we go with the epoxy.
yeah. So it held water for the first foot, and that's what they did coat. But obviously, they're thinking it's around the side seams, and possibly something that's.
And so it's a box.
Concrete porous, so it's
right. It's a box style culvert, right? So there are seams all the way around.
Yeah, it's about 100 foot length. It's roughly 10 by 10 by 100, let's call it that.
Yep.
So that 100 length is got in sections of, I want to say they're either in 20-foot sections or something like that. So yeah, I mean, it's for the application of locations where we had to jam in a site with all the other constraints on environmental and natural heritage. It was also a cheaper option at the time, and so. And then as Frank said, I just want to remind, so I think cutting any trees in the donut and other areas, it was just to the stump, no grinding the stumps, they just need to use that. So that's pretty much the update, because the other projects are more or less wrapped up.
Excellent. Thank you.
Yep.
Any further thoughts, ideas, questions, comments? Anybody from the virtual world?
Yes, hi.
Peter, keep your dog out of the well 5 and 6 areas.
I agree with that, and also I watched The people in action working hard on the project while waiting for the bus to respond.
Is there anything you don't see? Where don't you go? You're everywhere, Wiggins.
Yep, Norton, Annabelle, Taunton, Mansfield, Easton, and Foxborough.
Very good, very good. Well, thank you for your input. That being said, Mr. Bishop, I'll ask you your favorite motion.
Motion to adjourn, sir.
I'll second it. Thank you, everybody.
Good night, everyone. Good night, Luke and Steve.
Good night, Victoria. Good night, Wiggins.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.